Okay, we'll pass out a couple of source sheets for tonight's parsha class. Parshas Mishpatim. The 18th Torah portion is Parshas Mishpatim. That's where we are now. 18 is Chai, is life. It's also my bar mitzvah parsha. So I don't know if I understood anything in this parsha when I was 13. I did read it from the Torah, but there's so much contained in this week's parsha, so many details. And to be perfectly candid, when I was 13 years old, or really 12, when I started learning the parsha, I did find it not all that exciting. It's basically a bunch of laws, one after the other, a bunch of civil laws. And I didn't find it all that exciting. But that's the story of a 12/13-year-old. But now I don't know if I find it exciting, but I do find it exciting now. Different parts of it and different insights. And I hope that tonight we will be able to come away with a new approach to Mishpatim, Parshas Mishpatim, to the civil law, and we'll see where we go from there. I called it the honeymoon is over, meat and milk, Halacha and Kabbalah. We'll see why I called it that. And I'm not even entirely sure 100% why I called it that, but it just kind of came out that way. But we'll try to see exactly what I was trying to get at here, and hopefully we'll see if we can get there. So as I mentioned, Mishpatim is the 18th parsha in the Chumash. Start with Breshis, count 18, Chai, and you get the parsha Mishpatim. And today, a day of Chai, a day of life, is also a day of great pain and suffering for Klal Yisrael. And it's very hard to talk about. It's very hard to think about what happened today, even though really it's just a continuation from October 7th, from Torah. Nothing new happened. It's all stuff that I think, unfortunately, we knew already. Unfortunately, we were kind of hoping and praying that it wouldn't be what we expected it to be, that somehow something would happen, that it didn't really happen, or oh look, they're still alive, or at least that's what I was hoping in some way. I knew it wasn't possible, but I was hoping that it was possible anyway. And I guess that I kind of been hoping that we'll just wake up and the dream will be over and we'll see that it was just a nightmare. But it's I don't want to say it's ironic, but it's the 18th parsha. 18 is Chai, 18 is life. Today is also the 22nd day of the month of Shvat, which also means it's the yortzeit of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's wife, the Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka. Which, if you ever wondered why there's so many Chabad girls named Chaya or Mushka or Musya or Chaya Mushka or some variation thereof, that's why they're named after her. She passed away today, on this day, 37 years ago, 1988. So it's also her yortzeit today, and it's a day to take to heart messages of life, of what it means to live, what it means to be alive. So for starters, let's go back to the 17th parsha. The 17th parsha was Parshas Yisrael, which talks about the giving of the Torah. 17 is just like 18 has a gematria that everybody knows. 18 is gematria Chai, life. 17, anyone know the gematria of 17? Huh? Yud Zayin, right? What's Yud Zayin? Yaz. Tov. Tov is gematria 17. So the 17th parsha of the Torah, good. Good, that's the giving of the Torah. We read about the giving of the Torah, Mount Sinai, last week. That was a very exciting parsha. There's thunder and lightning, and God descends on the mountain, and Moshe climbs up the mountain, and the Jewish people are camping around it, totally in a state of unbelievable unity. And there's lightning and thunder, and it says that we saw what was normally heard, and we heard what was normally seen. It was an unbelievable experience that took place there. And then we come crash landing back into the 18th parsha, life. Oh, by the way, these are a bunch of laws that I have to tell you. Cut and dry, cold laws. You do this, you don't do that. You do this, you don't do that. So what's the crash landing? It's like the honeymoon is over, right? You get married and it's very exciting. You get engaged before you get married. You get engaged, you're dating, it's exciting. It's a little bit nerve-wracking. Then you make the big decision, the biggest decision of your life probably, to get married to this particular person. And it's very exciting. By the way, engagement is also very stressful. And I wouldn't recommend it to anybody, except that that's the way to get married. So you should get engaged at some point, God willing, but not for the sake of engagement, only for the sake of marriage. Because marriage is way better than being engaged. Engaged, for many people, I've heard this from a lot of people, is super stressful. And also, since I'm mentioning it, I'm just going to toss it out there. Just file this away somewhere and recall it when you need to. Longer the engagement, the worse. The longer the engagement is, the more potential there is for strife and arguing. I'm not saying you should get engaged, meet someone, get engaged the next day, and get married on the third day. I'm not saying that. But in general, once you've made a decision to get married, in general, do it. Go to the chuppah, get married. It doesn't have to drag on for a year. Again, I've seen just whatever, me and Sip with teaching chassanim in college, we teach young brides and grooms, and we, officiating weddings, this kind of thing. We've just seen over the years that long engagements are not really good for anybody. If you want to get married, mazel tov, now go find a hall and do it. Anyway. So the honeymoon is parsha Yisro, is the 17th parsha. The honeymoon is good. It's 17. It's very good. It's very exciting. It's romantic. There's passion. It's a chiddush. The whole thing's new. It's fresh. It's exciting. And the chassan and kala look at each other. They're so happy to look at each other. So happy to be next to each other. Spend time together. They don't want to do anything else. You can hardly separate them. And actually, the giving of the Torah is called the wedding, the time of the wedding of the Jewish people, because that's what it's likens to. Really, because the Torah, what it's really telling us, the Torah, like marriage, is also a relationship. My connection to Hashem is not about checking all the I got an X over there. Whoops. No, check. That's not what Judaism's about. Unfortunately, I've met too many people that seem to think that is what Judaism's about. Yeah, I went to Minyan today. Check. Yeah, I did Daf Yomi. Check. I'm good. No, that's not Judaism. That's something else. I'm not sure what it is exactly. Judaism is a relationship. Our sages tell us on Mount Sinai, we got married. Hashem and the Jewish people got married. So it's a marriage. So it's very exciting, passionate, but then crash landing, honeymoon is over. Parshas Mishpatim. 1 second, where's the thunder and the lightning and where's all that? None of that. Ve'ela Mishpatim asher tasim lifneim. These are the laws. Okay. This is what I have to do. Take out the trash. Okay. Don't eat meat and milk. Okay. If you have a slave, do this. Don't do that. Okay. So why is Ela Mishpatim? Why is that we crash land right into Parshas Mishpatim, all the civil law? What is that about? You go from the height of the honeymoon. Can't we have an easy letdown, so to speak? Can't we have another exciting parsha? But instead we turn to dry civil law, which is what Mishpatim basically is. Although at the end of the parsha, we go back a little bit out of order chronologically to talk about Mount Sinai again, the giving of the Torah, but we'll leave that aside for now. So I was learning Chumash earlier this week. I was learning the parsha, and I have a Mikros Gedolos. You know the Mikros Gedolos. They're fat volumes with lots of commentaries. So I looked in the first verse, and I saw 5 or 6 pages of commentary just on the first verse. Whoa. The Or HaChaim, we spoke about a couple of weeks ago. The Chaim Ibn Attar, the Ramban, Nachmanides, the Kli Yakar. I was at his grave once, and he's buried in Prague. Kli Yakar, and various others. Oh my gosh, I'm flipping. It's 6, 7 pages. Boom, each one. The Ramban is very long. The Or HaChaim, each one is longer than the other. I'm like, oh, I should probably learn these. They probably have a lot to say, but I'm a little bit lazy. And I noticed out of the corner of my eye. Stop shaking the table. I noticed out of the corner of my eye that the Sforno is 2 lines, a sentence. So I read that one. I didn't get to the other ones yet. God willing, one day I will. Let's take a look at the Sforno, because he addresses this question. Sforno was an Italian rabbi, and he wrote a commentary on the Chumash. Let's take a look. The Sforno says, Ve'ela Mishpatim. These are the laws. So he asks the question that we just posed. Why is Parshas Mishpatim immediately juxtaposed to Parshas Yisrael? Why do we follow up the so-called honeymoon of Parshas Yisrael, the giving of the Torah? Why do we follow that up with dry, cold civil law? So he gives a very straightforward answer, I think. Hine, the Parsha shel Maila haiso azhara shel isachmed koila shel reyacha. In the previous Parsha, in the Ten Commandments, we read one of the Ten Commandments that says, Loi sachmoid koil asher l're'acha. Don't covet anything, everything that belongs to someone else. Don't covet everything or anything that belongs to another person. But it doesn't tell you how to define what belongs to another person. How do I know? Comes along this week's parsha, the 18th, the parsha of life. Ve'ela mishpatim asher bom yoda ha'adam mahu kol asher l're'acha. Givaldik. Very simple, says the Sforno. In this week's parsha, now we'll know how to do what it says in last week's parsha. Because in this week's parsha, we're going to say, if your ox does this and your cow does that and your slave does this, and all the details of civil law, now we'll know what belongs to someone else, what's not mine, what to keep my hands off of. And therefore, I'll be able to fulfill what we read last week's parsha. Don't covet anyone else's stuff. How do I know what's someone else's stuff? What's considered someone else's stuff? Comes Mishpatim. Life. You got to know how to live. So it's fascinating to me. Right after Mount Sinai, what's the first thing God tells us? He might say, Tefillin is an unbelievable mitzvah. Shabbos, as the famous saying goes, Shabbos, over the ages, Shabbos has kept the Jewish people more than the Jewish people have kept Shabbos. Shabbos is what keeps us as a nation, keeps us together. Or maybe the laws of Aras Mishpacha, family purity. Or maybe we already read, don't murder, whatever. But no, right after the giving of the Torah, God says, you know what the first thing I need to talk to you about is how you treat another person. Not bein odom lamokim, not the laws between man and God, but the laws bein odom lachaveiroi. That is the 18th parsha. That is life. Life is how I treat another person. Not, God forbid, got to make this qualifying statement, not to the exclusion of my relationship with Hashem either. I got to put on tefillin too, even though that doesn't really affect anybody else. Although on a deeper spiritual level, every mitzvah I do affects someone else. It's like there was once a sailboat that set out to sail from across the Atlantic, from Europe to America. They get a little ways from shore. Some guy all of a sudden whips out a hammer and a big peg, nail, and starts hammering a hole in the bottom of the boat. Someone, what are you doing? What are you, Mashugana? He says, what do you mean what am I doing? This is where I'm sitting. What do you mean that's where you're sitting? You're making a hole in the... Yeah, but this is my spot. What does it make a difference what I do over here in my space? What does it make a difference to you over in your space? Obviously, it's ludicrous. Of course, if you make a hole in the boat, just because it's under you, everyone is affected by that. And it's that way spiritual too. Every mitzvah I do affects another Jew. So yes, my tefillin that I put on Baruch Hashem this morning and every morning, Baruch Hashem, 2 pairs, thank God, affect other Jewish people. And their tefillin affects me. So every mitzvah affects everybody else, and God forbid the contrary is also true. But nevertheless, that's not what the Torah starts out. That's not the 18th parsha. That's not post-honeymoon. That's not the day-to-day life of a Yid, of a Jew. The day-to-day life is, how am I going to treat you? How am I going to treat another human being? Ve'ela mishpatim, these are the laws. These are the civil laws. This is life. And it's that way in marriage too. Remember, we're talking about marriage. The giving the Torah is marriage. It's a marriage between the Jewish people and Hashem. So just like the first thing Hashem is saying to us is, guys, it's all important. It's all critical. But bein odom lachavero, how you treat the person next to you, how you treat another person, the civil law, that's chai, that's life. If a person is not a mensch, what else is there? The number of pages of Gemara they learned? What does it matter how many pages of Gemara you learned if you can't treat another person with basic dignity? What does it all matter? Parsha Mishpatim. It's all about the civil law, how I treat you and how you treat me. Again, just to make it clear, not, God forbid, to the exclusion of all the mitzvahs that are bein Adam Lamoko, between me and Hashem. Those other mitzvahs are also critical. Comments, questions so far? So I want to talk for a minute about one of these laws in this week's parsha that seems to be a little bit hard to understand, more than a little bit hard to understand, and especially in the context of what I'm saying. One of the laws in this week's parsha that stands out is the prohibition of eating meat and milk together. Basar b'cholov. Why does it stand out? For numerous reasons. Yes?
Isn't there like a scientific reason? Because, for example, like if you eat a cheeseburger, meat is protein and the cheese is protein, and two proteins together is not good for you.
That's interesting. I don't know. I have to ask a dietitian. Anybody here in what's it called? No, what's the dietitian? No, what's the dietitian program at Queen's College called? Finesse. Thank you. Finesse. Fitness and nutrition sciences or something like that, right? You have to ask somebody in finesse. I don't know. No, what else is unique about basar b'cholov? Yes.
It's cruel to kill a child, not to get.
Sounds cruel, doesn't it?
Yeah, but that's like cooking the milk of the mom.
Okay. Anything else unique about the prohibition of meat and milk? Yes.
Actually mentioned in the Torah directly.
Okay, we're maybe going to talk about that. It is and it isn't mentioned in the Torah directly, right? What does it actually say in the Torah in this week's parsha, and two more times as well, total of 3 times, the exact same words? Oh, excellent. Don't cook a what?
Oh, okay.
Went to seminary.
Cook a goat in the milk of its mother.
That's right. And it says that exact thing 3 times in this week's parsha Mishpatim, also again in Parshas Kisisa, and then again way later in the book of Devarim in Parshas Re'eh. Interestingly, not for today's shir necessarily, but interestingly, in this week's parsha and in Parshas Kisisa, both times it says Lo yisavashel gedi b'chalev imoy, don't cook a kid in its mother's milk, is in the context of bringing bikurim, the first fruits, to the Beis Hamikdash, the temple. Makesher, what's the connection? And only in Parshas Re'eh, in the book of Devarim, is it actually where it seems to belong in the context of what's foods are kosher or not kosher. Food for thought, no pun intended. So there's numerous things that are unique about the prohibition of basar b'cholov, of meat and milk, some of which was mentioned already. Another thing is that it's a very strict prohibition. What do I mean by that? There's 3 things you're not allowed to do with meat and milk. Number 1, you're not allowed to eat it. No cheeseburgers. Sorry. No cheeseburger. Number 2, not allowed to cook it, even if you're not planning on eating it.
What do you mean?
What I mean is you're not allowed to take meat and milk and combine them and turn on the flame, even if you have no intention to eat it. You're cooking it for someone else, or you're going to chuck it in the garbage. You're not allowed to. Not allowed
You wouldn't be able to work at McDonald's, for example.
Correct. That would be a problem. That's right. Number 3 is not only not allowed to eat the combination. Not only are you not allowed to cook it together, you're not even allowed to derive any benefit from it whatsoever. So if you somehow came into possession that you had some meat and milk combo deal going on, I don't know how you got it, because you didn't want to cook it, because you're not allowed to do that either. Certainly not going to eat it. Let's say you just have it somehow.
Just own a McDonald's.
You can't, yeah.
Right. You can't eat it. You can't cook it. Okay, I didn't cook it. What do you do with it now? Oh, I know. I'll sell it. No. You cannot derive benefit from it in any way whatsoever. You have to burn it, dispose of it. You can't give it to a dog. Nothing. You have to burn it, dispose of it completely. This is a very unique aspect of basar b'cholov, of meat and milk.
So like you can't cook it for like a non-Jew?
No, absolutely not. No. On top of that, in the context of Parshas Mishpatim, remember, what is the main topic of Parshas Mishpatim, this week's parsha? What's the main topic? Civil law. Civil law is, by and large, laws that make sense. Maybe I don't understand every little detail, but overall, the laws of how people have to relate to each other are based on some kind of logic. In fact, Mishpatim, the very name of the parsha, Mishpatim means laws that make sense. Laws that even if the Torah had not told me, we may have figured it out on our own anyway. Comes the Torah and inserts into Mishpatim a collection of civil law, a collection of mitzvahs that are logical and make sense. And it inserts, by the way, meat and milk, that makes sense? Doesn't make sense. That's a chok. That's a statute, as they say in English. It's a law that doesn't make sense. It's a law that has no reason to us, seemingly. Why can't you combine meat? You want to say meat according to science, it's no good. I don't know. Let's check up on that. But there's seemingly no reason not to combine it. So it also doesn't fit in the parsha, seemingly. But I want to suggest that really it's also about marriage. It's also about relationships. And it's also about how I treat you and how you treat me. That's what I want to suggest. The prohibition of meat and milk. Now, to be clear, the prohibition of meat and milk is what's called a chok. It's a law we have no known reason for. Just like the laws of shatnez, that's another combination, by the way, although there are differences, but right, shatnez is the prohibition of combining wool and linen together. There are differences, by the way. Anybody know the differences? Wool and linen.
Linen? Sorry.
Meaning wool and linen on their own are each A-okay, right? Nothing wrong with wool, nothing wrong with linen. Combine them, oh, big problem. Same with meat and milk. Meat's okay, milk's okay, assuming they're kosher. Combine them, oh, big problem. However, shatnez actually is permitted for a mitzvah. Like technically, tzitzis, if they were shatnez, you could wear them. And in the Beis Hamikdash, the Kohen Gadol wore a garment that was made out of shatnez. It doesn't make any sense. Exactly. Also, the laws of nida, the laws of taras mishpacha, right? A woman immersing in mikveh after a cycle. This is also a chok, a law that has no logical reason for it. And there are others. Torah Aduma is one of the famous ones, right? The red heifer, that somehow you burn the red heifer, do this whole thing, take his ashes, sprinkle it on someone who's ritually impure. Presto, they're pure. Doesn't make any sense. Many more like that. But then there are laws that make sense. Don't murder. Okay, I get that. Honor your mother and father. Sure, because of course I want to honor my mother and father because then I want my kids to see that and they should honor me too. Like it's logical. It makes sense. And so on and so forth. So basar b'chalav, the prohibition of eating, cooking, and deriving any benefit from meat and milk is not logical. It's only from Hashem could say such a thing. And that is what's called a chok. Now, but again, I want to suggest that really this is also related to how we treat other people. It also has insight into relationships and marriage and life. And it also fits into the 18th parsha, the parsha of life, the parsha of how I treat other human beings. Am I a mensch? So I think it was already touched on a little bit before, right? What is meat? What is milk? The Torah tells us, don't cook a kid its mother's milk. I don't know we don't really have time for the Mishnah here, but there's a Mishnah in Chulin that discusses the different laws about it. What type of meat, what type of milk? Does that include birds? Like chicken, for example, poultry? The answer is yes, it does include birds. That's the conclusion. It includes birds are poultry is a rabbinic prohibition, not a Torah prohibition. But in any event, let's look for a moment at Shulchan Aruch, at the bottom of the page. This is one of the sections that you would study for smicha, for rabbinical ordination. Simon Peites in the book of Yordea. It says, "Shaloi lechol gvina achrei basar." Don't eat cheese after meat. It says like this. This is the Shulchan Aruch. Ochal basar, if you ate meat, afilu shel chaya, even if it was meat not of a domesticated animal, which is what the Torah is directly speaking about, but it was of a wild animal, a chaya, like a deer or something, v'oif, or a bird, like poultry, a duck, or a chicken, or whatever. If you ate any of those types of meat, lo yochel gvina achrev, don't eat cheese afterwards. You heard this before, right? No ice cream after you had fleischiks. You have to wait. How long do you have to wait? Oh, big controversial question. How long do you have to wait? Well, I'm not going to make it up. I'm just going to read what the Shulchan Aruch says. Ad sheyisha sheish sho'os, until you wait 6 hours between meat and eating milk. That's enough for now. There's many more details to this. So you can't have them together. What's the big deal? So what is milk? milk, and remember the verse says, Lo yisvashel gidi, don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. And if it was other milk, like what's it has to be its mother's milk? No, by the way, you could cook a goat in any other milk also. It doesn't have to be its mother's milk. It would still be prohibited. But milk, mother's milk, is representative of giving, of chesed, of kindness, of love, the way that only a mother can give to her offspring, to her child. Right? When a mother nurses, the milk supply is not depleted. I mean, it is depleted, but then it's refilled again. It's almost like fire. Like, people like to say with fire is the most unique physical object, because if you pass a fire to someone else, they can have it and you'll still have the fire also, right? You take one match, touch it with someone else's match, you just gave them fire, but you still have it. You didn't lose it. If I give you $1, now I'm missing, now I'm out $1. If I give you fire, you have the fire, I also have the fire. Right? But milk is that way too. When the mother nurses her child, she's giving away from herself. She's giving away her milk that she produced, but she's getting it back. It replenishes. It's unbelievable. And it is, the more she nurses, the more milk comes. So milk is representative of chesed, of kindness, of ahava, of love, of giving. So the Torah says you can't take a child with its mother. There's something exceedingly cruel about taking a child with its mother. That's where it came from. The child just came from the mother and is now being sustained by the milk from the mother, which is representative of that total selfless giving that only a mother does. So the Torah tells us, I mean, not directly in the Torah, but just the ideas, right? Jews don't do that. We don't do it, even though, meaning, if it's cruel, let's take a step back. If indeed it's so cruel to take a child, take a kid, a baby goat, and cook it in its mother's milk, that's so cruel. No. So walk it back a step. So don't kill the goat at all. What are you shechting him for? Don't kill him at all. Become a vegetarian. If it's really so cruel, so don't do it. You hear the question? But no. Hashem set up the world in a hierarchy. And that hierarchy is that every level is sustained by the lower level. So you have plant life, then above them you have animal life, and then above the animals you have humans. Each one is sustained by what's below it, right? A plant, and a plant is sustained by what's below it. What's below the plant? The water and the ground, inanimate objects, inanimate life, if you will. So a plant is sustained by the water that's in the ground, and so forth, or the sunlight, whatever it may be. So by utilizing that energy that's present in the water and the ground and present in other nutrients in the dirt and so forth, the plant life is elevating the earth up to its level. What happens to the plants? A nice little cow comes along, a nice little shepsel comes along, munch, 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 and eats the plants, and pastures in the grass, and eats the plant, right? Kosher animals are vegetarians. Kosher animals are not carnivores. So comes the cow or the sheep or the goat comes along and munches on the grass. The grass is saying, Baruch Hashem. That's what the grass, if the grass could talk, he would say, Baruch Hashem. Thank God I was eaten by a cow. Now I can ascend to his level. So we're all sustained by what's beneath us. Finally, human, we're also sustained by what's beneath us. We're sustained by animals. We eat animals. So the Torah says, shechting animals, we're supposed to do it a certain way, right? We're supposed to slaughter. We don't just shoot an animal, kill it. No, the Torah says, listen, there's such a system in our world where every level is sustained by what's beneath it. So plants are sustained by the ground. The animals are sustained by the plants beneath them. Humans are sustained by the animals beneath them. That's the system. That's not cruel. That's just the way things are. Now, when you're going to go kill the animal, you have to do it in the most humane way. You have to slaughter the animal with a knife, a sharp knife with all the details, because that's the quickest, most humane way to kill the animal. So that's not cruel. That's the way the world was set up by Hashem. Now, take that one step further. Okay, good. You know what? I have a goat. I need to cook it, a baby goat. I'm going to slaughter it. I got to cook it in something, right? You need some kind of liquid for cooking. You can roast it over an open flame like the Korban Pesach, right? Or maybe I need some liquid to make sure it stays moist. Where do I have liquid from? Oh, the mother's right here. She just gave birth. I'm going to take the milk from the mother. It's obvious. Where else will I get? Milk's right here. I'll use the milk. No. The Torah says that's cruel. That's cruel. The slaughtering of the animal is not cruel. That's the way the world was set up. But we don't need to add on top of that. To take a child with its mother's milk. We don't do that. They do it. They do it. Our enemies do that. And that's what they did. Kfir and Ariel, taken with the mother. For them, that's life. This is the opposite of Judaism. Complete opposite of everything that we believe in and everything we stand for. They take a child with the mother. We would never even contemplate such a thing. The Torah says, do not cook a kid in its mother's milk. You can't take chesed, the giving, the love that the mother has. That can't be combined with meat. Meat represents gevura, strength. Meat is red, milk is white. Let's take a look over here in the paragraph on the second page. On the second paragraph, the reason for the prohibition of meat and milk, ki basar bechinas din v'gevura. Basar, according to Kabbalah, meat is representative of din, of judgment and severity. It's a typo. V'cholav hu bechinas chesed v'nachamim. But milk is representative of chesed and compassion, like the way that a mother has compassion on her children, the way that only a mother can have compassion on her children. That there is nothing like that anywhere else in the world. The way a mother looks at her child, the way a mother treats her child, the way a mother has rachmanos on her children. V'osur la'arvam. Therefore, you're not allowed to mix them together. Not allowed to mix them together. They don't go together, they're opposites. Questions or comments? So, yeah, in these exceedingly difficult days, ve'ela mishpatim. This is what we're called to do. We're called to examine how I treat you. And you're called to examine how you treat other people. This is the call of the hour. The Torah is what we live with. The Torah gives us messages that are appropriate for our time right now, right here. The Torah is speaking thousands of years ago. It's speaking today. Tzip was saying to me the other day that she said there was some celebrity, apparently, that I really don't know the details. I don't want to know the details. I don't want to get into the details, who paraded his wife basically naked on television or something. I'm not sure exactly the details of that. I don't want to know the details. And Tzip said to me, it's mamish the Purim story, that Achashverosh wanted his wife Vashti to walk naked in front of everybody. And people think the Torah is hard to believe. The Torah is emes. The Torah is true. The world is hard to believe. It's hard to believe what goes on in the world. The Torah tells us truth. The Torah speaks to us always and exclusively emes, truth. And it's always relevant. It's always applicable, particularly the parsha. And this is the call of the hour, that we are called on to ask ourselves, how am I treating my roommates? How am I treating my family members, my friends? Yeah, roommates, exactly. How am I treating the people that I know? It's not, I don't mean it intense. It is intense, but I don't mean it that way. This is what we have to do. And we have to demand of ourselves to grow. We have to demand of ourselves to become better people in a very basic way. Just like the Torah says, this 18th parsha, the parsha of life, is how you treat another person. And this is what we're called upon now to examine and to ask ourselves, seriously to ask ourselves, and to demand more from ourselves. Not to accept ourselves, oh, I'm good. I'm good. That's not Yiddishkeit. Even if you are good, even if you're doing great things. But we are called upon to demand more, not to be satisfied with what I've done till now. And yeah, I'm a nice guy. No, that's not enough. It's not enough. And that's the real marriage. The honeymoon's not real. I mean, it's real, but come on. It's over. It's a week, whatever it is. I don't know. And then the honeymoon will come crash landing down. That's the marriage. That's the real test of what the marriage is like. As it goes on, the day-to-day, the mundane, day-to-day life. How do you treat the person that you now live with? How do you talk to them? How do you relate to them? How do you care for them? How do you think about them? How do you help them? What do you offer them? This is really what makes the marriage. And this is really what makes our lives and what makes Yiddishkeit. So Mitzvah Hashem is all of the bracha that we should be able to treat ourselves nicely and to treat other people nicely. And hopefully in some way, I don't know how, well, I'll just conclude with one last point that I was thinking about earlier today, is that of course, Kfir means a lion, a young lion. It's hard to talk about. And Ariel also means a lion. And so they both mean lion. You know what else is called a lion? Chazal tell us that Mashiach is also called Ariel. Mashiach is called a lion. And the Beis HaMikdash, the temple, is also called a lion. These are the two lions. So I hope that the lions will come back. The little lions will come back, God willing, very soon. And Mashiach will come ultimately, hopefully, it's going to be soon, because I think it's enough already of this golus already, enough of this exile. Mashiach should come and bring us all to Yerushalayim, where he will rebuild the Beis HaMikdash, the lion, and in Mitzvah Hashem, it will be only very speedily and with a lot of joy. God willing, we'll all be able to rejoice and celebrate, hopefully already by Shabbos in Yerushalayim. Any last comments, questions? Okay, thanks everyone for coming. And next week again, I think we have a system of 4 out of 5. I don't know which week. This is week 3, I think. Okay, so next week is week 4. See you then.
Thank you.